Hey everybody, Tim here. I'll talk if you'll listen. Episode 64. And this is the last episode of Black History Month. I'm really excited for it. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to squeeze in one more. I think I'm going to squeeze in one more. So let's make this the second to last episode of Black History Month. I think I am going to try to pump out as many as possible. And I do have a really special interview that I plan on putting out sometime not this upcoming week, but the following week, and it would technically have been March. But I'm going to move some things around. I'm going to put that out this upcoming weekend, but that'll be episode 65. But don't want to put the cart in front of the horse here. We're on episode 64, so I guess we should live in the moment. What am I up to? What have I been doing? What do I want to talk about? Well, what have I been up to? More of the same. I am changing my eating habits. I don't want to quite call it a diet, but like I mentioned in the past couple of episodes, this quarantine weight is really starting to catch up to me. I've been benefiting from a very fast metabolism, and for those of you who aren't aware of what that means I can eat a lot and I won't gain much weight, if any. I remember for a good chunk of time, I couldn't get past like 139 pounds or something like that, no matter how much I ate. I stayed at that weight mark. And I don't know how much I weigh right now. You know, we have a scale, and I just looked at it the other day. I have no idea how much I weigh, but I'm starting to notice just certain parts of my body getting a little heavier, mainly my belly, my gut, and I don't like that. And I think a lot of people who don't like the way that they look uh, spend a lot of time going, woe is me, or being the victim, and they don't do anything about the way that they look. I think if you don't like something about yourself, that can be changed by yourself. We're not talking things like surgery or, anything unhealthy. But if you don't like, your weight, you don't like your 4-pack, you want it to be a 6-pack, you don't like certain things, then you have the power to change it. And I mean that in the healthiest way possible. Obviously, we're not getting into shaming anybody for looking a way that they can't help. It is what it is. You do have to I don't want to say compete, but in a way, yeah, compete with, genetics and hereditary and science, biology, chemistry, all these other things that are working against you sometimes. But in general, we have a lot of impact, a ton of influence on how we look. And me personally, again, I know myself really, really well. And this is why it's so important to know yourself. I know myself really, really well. And I know I can't just flip a switch on and do something like right away, like, the opposite of cold turkey, or in some cases cold turkey, where you're saying, you know what, I'm not eating cheese sticks ever again. I can't just flip that switch. I know myself enough to know that. And I'm not going to set myself up for failure. I think a lot of the times people set goals, they set unrealistic goals because they're in the moment, they're excited, they're feeling emotional, but they don't know themselves enough to know, or at least they don't consider how much they know themselves enough to be like, that's not me. I know that's not going to work. So for me, I can't just go from cold to hot without going through the warm phase, so to speak. So I'm not quite calling it a diet yet, because that's not really what it is, but I am changing the way I eat to a degree. I'm trying my very, very best not to eat past like 10 o'clock or too late, like right before I go to bed. And the reason that's so difficult, and I know this sounds like first world problems, right? And some of you are probably thinking, boohoo, cry me a river. But a part of the reason this is so challenging for me is because of that fast metabolism, I'm always hungry. So I could literally eat a few hours before 10, and then now I'm hungry again. So I can have a late dinner and eat at like 8 o'clock. And by 10:30, I'm hungry again. And it's really easy, like snacks, get it like a granola bar or something like that. But it doesn't fill me up. So next thing I know, I'm kind of like putting off the inevitable. And eventually I open up the fridge and I get some leftovers. What kind of goes hand in hand with that is how early I go to bed, which is something else I've been wanting to do because I found out throughout the week I wake up and I'm almost always tired, no matter how much sleep I get or how little sleep I get. And on the weekends, I always sleep in super late. I sleep into like 11, 11:30, in some cases noon. And I feel like my weekend, my free time is like going away. And a part of it is me trying to justify sleeping in late. Like, oh, I don't get to do this during the week. And, it's a reward for getting up early throughout the week. I deserve it. But what I'm starting to realize is I'm only really hurting myself because by having such a sporadic sleep schedule, having a sleep schedule all over the place, it really messes with your biological clock and your general chemistry in general. It really throws a lot of the things off. So I'm trying to pull back a little bit. I've done a really good job with the exception of Friday night because that's the weekend and I work late, of going to bed before midnight, which has been incredibly difficult for me at all phases during my life. You know how when you're younger, you used to hate getting up in the morning, and then as an adult, you become a morning person, or when you're younger, you love to stay up late, and as you're older now, you hate to stay up late or you can't stay up late. I've been consistent in that area since I can remember. I've always been what they like to call a night owl, which when you really break down doesn't really make much sense, at least not to me. Um, but I've always been a creature of the night, so to speak. I've always stayed up late. I've always operated fairly okay with at least like 5 to 6 hours of sleep, and I hate waking up early in the morning, whether that's 5 o'clock in the morning or whether it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I really hate getting up in the morning. I've always been like that, but I've noticed that, well, hey, if I go to bed earlier, I'll wake up hungry, and if I wake up hungry, I'll eat breakfast because I'm really big on like I'm really guilty of, I should say, of not eating breakfast, and that's just because as soon as I wake up, I kind of get to work and I don't allow my body enough time to get hungry. I usually don't get hungry until like 10:30, 11ish, but by then I'm like, okay, whatever I would have had for breakfast isn't going to fill me up, so I need something a little bit heavier, and it throws off my whole eating schedule. And I don't know how many of you have fallen victim to this. For those of you who may be working from home now, for all of the essential workers out there or people who are still going into wherever they work, you probably don't have much of this going on for you. But for a lot of you who used to go into work but now you're working from home, I'm sure your eating routine, your sleeping habits have all changed. And this is the biggest area where it changed in me. So I'll wake up, I'll get straight to work. After like going in the bathroom for about 15, 20 minutes to freshen up, I'll go straight to work. Then from there, I'll finally start to get hungry. I'm eating something a little bit heavier. Since it's a little heavier, I don't get hungry again until about like 2 or 3. And at this point, I'm eating heavy, and then because I ate heavy, I don't get hungry again until probably later on in the evening. So by the time when dinner's ready, I'm not eating because I'm not hungry. And then come 8, 9 o'clock, I eat, but I'm staying up until 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'm going to get hungry again before I go to bed. So I'm trying to slowly change some habits. So I set a personal goal of being in bed by midnight. I don't have to be asleep by midnight because I know that's unrealistic for me. I want to at least be in bed by midnight. If I'm at least in bed by midnight, then I can slowly start to get to sleep and my body will start to go, okay, it's bedtime, and kind of start to wind down, and I'll be asleep before 12:30 more than likely. And obviously, if I go to bed earlier, if I'm asleep earlier, then even if I do get hungry, I can kind of like have sleep for dinner, basically. So that's kind of like what I'm working on. For those, I put my bike together. I got my bike. I put it together. If you follow me on Instagram or Twitter, then you probably seen the pictures that I posted. But the bike came about 85% put together. I just had to put the seat, the handlebars, and the front wheel and the pedals on. I had to put all that on. But it didn't take too long. Of course, I stretched it out to be as much, to be much longer than it needed to be. But it was fairly simple putting everything together. I found a cool video online I watched, and because the instructions, you could tell were translated from whatever language they were originally written in. and the pictures weren't great. So there was a lot of things that were basically the instructions for people who know bikes. It was poorly translated. So you have like broken English. You have poor pictures. It had two models in there, but it didn't distinguish the models. So you just kind of had to guess, okay, this picture is for me. And then lastly, it assumed that you were like a bike aficionado already, so you knew what certain terms meant. I had to like look them up. I had to like Google certain terms. Like the chain is called something. I believe it starts with a D. I can't think of what it is right now, but like I'm like I have no idea what this is. At first, I thought it was a word that just didn't get translated, and then I had to look it up, and it was like, no, this is the thing that the chain sits on, and everything, and it was like, okay, this is a little too much. So I put it together. I did not ride it yet. Again, newsflash: if you haven't been listening since forever, I don't know how to ride a bike, so I'm going to teach myself. I live in an apartment complex with a great open parking lot, great open space. So I'm going to teach myself how to ride. But right now, because of all of the snow, it's been impeding my willingness to go out because there's a bunch of rock salt everywhere, and the salt isn't sharp enough to like puncture the tire or anything, but it is um it's an obstruction. It's almost kind of like riding on gravel a little bit, and that's probably not something that a first timer should be trying to learn how to ride on, So hopefully after this week, I know we're supposed to get some more snow in the northeast part of the country. So hopefully this upcoming week is basically the last week for snow, and all of the rock salt will be gone, and I can really try to get out there. So what I did today was I went out on the balcony and I sat on the bike to like just balance it, just to get my balance. And I was much more comfortable than I had anticipated. I'm finding that the biggest challenge that I have is my height because of the way the bike is. And the seat couldn't go all the way down because you kind of had to clip like this reflector on. You know those little reflectors that go on the bike where people, if they're driving behind you, they can see you on the bike. Um, so because the reflector had to go onto the stem or the neck of the seat, you, it couldn't go like all the way down. And even though it's probably only like a few inches, it's a huge difference because basically I have to lean the bike. Like my feet don't touch the ground if I'm sitting on the bike. You know what I mean? Like I have to kind of like take my butt off of the seat and work my way up towards like the neck of the bike, like the frame of the bike, like that piece in between, the piece that connects the front wheel and the back wheel. I'm just trying to paint a vivid picture for you all. I have to kind of like be standing over that for both of my feet to be on the floor, which is fine. And obviously, if I'm riding it, I can lean over and have one foot on the ground, and that's fine. But I've read a few different articles or pieces of information that said when you're trying to learn how to ride a bike, it's really important that your feet can touch the floor because when you first learn, you kind of like do that glide thing where like your feet are on the floor and you treat it like a big old scooter essentially, where you kind of push off and without pedaling, you basically ride the momentum of the bike from your push off, and like you lift your feet up and you don't pedal, but you try to just work on your balancing because pedaling is easy, right? It's the balance part that's the challenge. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge for me. I'm gonna have to figure something out, and I'm not against returning the bike, but I don't really want to do that. But I've been right now the bike is on the balcony, so I've been sitting on the bike, hand on the rail, and just taking the kickstand up and just trying to balance on the bike just to see how comfortable I feel. And like I said, I felt a little bit more comfortable than I thought I would, but being stationary with a railing to hold you up is much different from trying to practice with momentum. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm happy to say that a lot of the things that I wanted to be committed to are like slowly starting to come into shape. It's really easy to quit, but after a while you realize when you're doing something for you, that's kind of like all the motivation that you need. Because when you do something with somebody, it's real easy to quit. Because if that person isn't as dedicated as you, or if that person stops, it's real easy to be like, oh well, I ain't got nobody to do it with. How many times has that happened to you all, where you're like, hey, I'm gonna start this thing. I'm going to the gym, or I'm going on walks, or I'm going jogging, and the person you're doing it with, just doesn't want to do it or isn't as dedicated as you are. So now you find yourself creating this like false narrative of I would do it, but I don't have anybody to do it with. In reality, you just aren't motivated to do it because the person you're doing it with isn't doing it. Um, and not everybody is self motivated. Like not everybody is self motivated. Not everybody can get up and tackle the day with 100%. Sometimes you need that accountability partner to kind of like push you or nudge you along. But I am a firm believer that if you are doing something for yourself, like it's 100% selfish, and you're doing something for yourself, you're trying to get healthier for you. You're trying to lose weight for you. You're trying to, paint the house for you. You're trying to start a business for you. Um, I think you're a little bit more motivated than drawing from something else, because even if you draw from something else, it's nice and it can be a noble goal sometimes. Hey, I'm starting this orphanage for the kids, right? But if that motivation goes to the wayside or is no longer needed by that group, it's kind of like let's say you're in a relationship, right, and you want to lose weight for your partner, or let's say you're a part of a nonprofit and you want to start a new foundation for homeless minorities or something like that. Well, if that group of people, if they aren't there anymore, or if you break up with your partner, or if your partner doesn't really care anymore, well, now that motivator, that thing that inspired you to do that thing, is now gone. So now what? But when you're doing it for you, it's I think harder to quit, in my opinion. So I do feel, and motivation is contagious, inspiration is contagious. Once you set out to do something and you start checking these boxes off, you feel like, okay, what's next? What's next? And I've been having smoothies for breakfast, even when I'm not hungry, just to help. Okay, here's a meal that I have during the day, and it's been nice. It's been really, really nice. The smoothies consist of primarily they're vegetable and fruit smoothies. Um, Coconut water, which is a great filler, by the way. For those of you out there who are looking for like a good filler for your smoothies or your shakes or whatever the case may be, coconut water is great. Not only is it healthy and it helps with hydration, it tastes great. And when it gets mixed with everything else, it doesn't overpower the flavors of anything else, which I was really concerned about, because the first thing I started to do was get these V8 cans, the vegetable juice in the can. I used to just drink it straight because I'm like, hey, this is however many servings of fruits and vegetables that I don't get on a daily basis, or vegetables rather, that I don't get on a daily basis. So let me just do it that way. And it was disgusting. I felt like this shouldn't be like an interrogation where I'm like drinking this and it's like causing me pain, right? Um, so I'm like, okay, well, maybe if I make a vegetable smoothie, but what do you mix with vegetables, or mainly vegetable juice? So I tried a few different things. At first, I tried all vegetable juice. It was vegetable juice and water, like normal water, like from the like a pitcher of water, and that wasn't great. Then I think I threw in like bananas. Still didn't taste great. Then I threw in strawberries, and it tasted better, but it was still like the vegetable juice was like really overbearing and like super powerful flavor. So I forget how we got on the discussion, but me and my girl were talking about coconut water. So I used coconut water and hit the nose on the head. It was like, okay, perfect. Um, it was like, okay, great. So yeah, so I start off with my smoothies in the morning, even if it's not right away, even if it's like, I get to work and I've been working for like an hour or so, 45 minutes or so. I still get the smoothie together afterwards, and it's been a huge help. So I've been doing that for this past week, and I started this a while ago. It was almost like 3 weeks straight, not counting weekends, that I was having a smoothie at least once a day, and I stopped because we had ran out of strawberries, And I was like, okay, well, I just won't make a smoothie until we get strawberries. And then we got them, but by that point, the routine was broken, and it took me a while to kind of get back on the ball. So I'm really happy, easing myself into a diet, easing myself into working out. I'm at home because I'm too afraid to go to the gym, and things are kind of working out. Oh, and the Spanish, y'all, the Spanish. I guess the very last update that I got for y'all until we get into before we get into the topic is the Spanish. So I've been doing the Spanish since I said I started, which was probably over a month at this point. And I've gotten past the intro course, I've gotten past the phrases, and I've gotten past the travel. So now I'm on food. So I'm learning things like fish, which is pescado. I'm working on my pronunciation. So all my Spanish speakers out there, don't hurt me. But fish, which I guess is pescado. Pescado. Um, Hamburger, which is like hamburger. Oof, I'm gonna butcher this. Butcher it. Pun intended. I'll see myself out. It's like hamburguesa, but trying to say it correctly is like really hard. It's like hamburguesa. It's like really hard. Cheese, which is queso. Learn stuff like it pretends like you're at a restaurant, like a restaurant setting, like a table for two, please. Uh, so that's una mesa para dos, por favor. Um, yeah, I'm feeling myself a little bit. Some of them easy, some of them easy. What else do I know? Geez, when you're on the spot and you're trying to think about it, you can't think. But when I do the quizzes, I fly through the quizzes. But yeah, I'm learning a lot. And it's pretty fun just to have that habit going. So yeah, that's how the diet, the fitness, and the Spanish are the three things going on for me right now. So that's pretty much what's going on for me. But keep an eye on the social media. I like to post little videos and talk about my progress in certain areas, and it's always fun. So if you don't already follow me, please do, so that way you can stay connected. I am going to take a quick break. I'm going to pay a little bit of bills, and I'll be right back on the other side with the topic for today's episode. Hey, gang, I'm back. All right, so just to keep the theme going with Black History, I told you all I try my very best to how I celebrate Black History in general is I try to learn more about people in the Black culture who are either currently making Black history or they are a part of Black history. And I think a lot of times when we hear Black history, it's really, really easy to flock towards the known people, right? The Coke and the Pepsis of Black history, so to speak. Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Maya Angelou, Rosa Parks, right? These staples, and not to take anything away from them, but it's kind of like one of those things that, and I really don't like gatekeepers. People who feel like you're not a fan of anime because you only watch Dragon Ball Z, or you aren't a gamer because you only play Call of Duty, or Madden. You are not into fitness because you only go to gym. You only go to the gym twice a week. I really hate those gatekeepers who feel like they are the authority of certain things, and I definitely don't want to fall into that category when it comes to Black history. But I will say that there's so much more history out there to learn about, and I think anyone who wants to learn about Black history and just history in general, you're doing yourself a disservice if you only stick to the well-known names, so to speak. And being part of an organization like Prince Hall Freemasonry, I am privileged and blessed enough to have exposure to different things in different areas that maybe most people wouldn't know about. And one of the founders of Prince Hall Masonry and Masonry in general for African Americans in the country, not just the state of Pennsylvania, but the country, is a gentleman by the name of Richard Allen. So today was our Founders Day for Prince Hall. And if you aren't familiar, I would give you a really, really brief overview. If you're familiar with some Greek organizations, like the Alphas or Deltas, things of that nature, you may have an inkling on what a Founders Day is. But if you don't know what those organizations are, and or you aren't a Mason or an Eastern Star or a Knight of Pythagoras, you may not know what Founders Day is for Masons. So basically, Founders Day, and that's S apostrophe, not apostrophe S, because there's more than one founder, is a day that we celebrate them and we educate our craft and other people about these people. And one of the people is Richard Allen. And I'm not going to go too much into, because there's so much information out there and it was like information overload. And I really wanted to get this episode out, but I don't want to gloss over everything that he has done. But the two things that really stuck out to me was he helped to found Masonry, Prince Hall Masonry, in the country, which is huge. He also put together a non-denomination religious group for African Americans, and they did all types of good work. And he said he believes that social work and religious work go hand in hand, and that's huge. You don't have to be a religious person in order to do good for your community. And they are two sides of the same coin. And I think a lot of the times people confuse Masonry with religion. My blood brother, like my actual biological brother, said he loves everything about Masonry. He loves what they represent. And he works for SEPTA. So he says a lot of the brothers that he works with with SEPTA, in SEPTA, are all Masons. And he said, but I got some reservations about it because of my faith, which lets me know that he's ignorant to what Masonry is. And that's not to pick on him, but a lot of people are like that. A lot of people are like, oh, Masons are great, y'all do good stuff, but usually got if someone's hesitant about Masonry, is usually two schools of thought. The first school of thought is they don't know enough about it and they hear so much about Masonry from people who aren't Masons, so they come up with these inaccurate conclusions about devil worshiping, and it's a cult and it's a secret society and has a lot of negative associations. Or you got the other side where people have no qualms about Masonry and they love it, but they don't want to involve themselves beyond just being a fan because they believe it will conflict with their religious beliefs or their faith, which again is born out of ignorance. It comes from not talking to enough Masons. Now, I think a part of it is, and I know we're getting away from Richard Allen a little bit. I'll reel it in a second. A part of it is on Masonry as a whole, both the idea, the organization, and the brother, because it's our responsibility to help educate in certain areas. Now, don't confuse educate with convince, right? Our job is not to convince somebody of anything or get them on our side or anything like that. It's just simply to educate, and what people do with that information is on them. So a part of Masonry suffers because it's tied up in tradition, which is both good and bad. But just to focus on the poor part of it is tradition can be really stubborn sometimes. And you got people who've been Masons since before like area codes were a thing. And they believe, no, Masonry should operate this way. Well, they've never been a Mason for the first time in the 21st century before. They've never been a Mason for the first time in 2021. That's never been it. So obviously they're thinking about how things used to be, and as far as they're concerned, just like any organization, whether it be politics or a company, usually the older people believe that the way things should be is the way that they were brought up, the way that they're used to, right? So unfortunately, what comes with that is there is a lot of secrecy around some things that aren't really secrets. But we talked about gatekeepers, right? You got the OG gatekeepers who feel like, no, if you want to be a Mason, you need to ask to be one, and then we'll tell you everything. Which that should be true in certain specific areas, but someone asks, hey, what do Masons do? That shouldn't be a secret, right? But another part of that is on the person who believes what's convenient. A lot of people want to believe what's convenient for their belief system, and a lot of people want to believe whatever drives their narrative. So they're not going to go and look up and see who Richard Allen was and all the good that he did for his community and how the spirit of Richard Allen has impacted not only Masons but every black abolitionist or um, civil rights activist since his time. They look for the conspiracy theorists on YouTube, and one of the biggest arguments that drives me nuts is when a conspiracy theorist or a naysayer meets a Mason and they say, hey, you do this, you do that, you do this. And that Mason says, oh, we actually don't. We're about this. Their argument is, oh, you don't know that yet. You're not high up enough yet. Well, to use that same argument, if I don't know something because I'm not high up enough, how do you know you're not even a Mason? Where's the logic there? So it just really cracks me up. But not to take away from Richard Allen. Richard Allen was huge because he did a lot for the community. He helped to found Masonry, and he even helped to found the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is huge. It's now been, the name of the church has been changed to Mother Bethel Episcopal Church, which is in Philadelphia. I don't have the address, so you'll have to excuse me. And the purpose of this is just to let you all know who I've been researching, and I don't want to take the joy of discovering who somebody is away from you. So I do encourage you to do a quick Google search, Richard Allen. It's been huge. Allen actually wasn't even his last name. He took the name Allen as the last name. And one thing that was really, really cool to me is there are some disputes about when, or rather where he was born, whether it was Philadelphia or Delaware, but he was a slave and he was sold to a farm owner. I believe the farm owner's name was Sterling Sturgis, but I could be wrong about that. In Pennsylvania. And check this out. This is huge. This is to go back to what I said before the break. If you do something for yourself and you do it to help other people in the long run, but you initially do it for yourself, you can do anything. And one thing that Richard Allen did was he purchased his own freedom from slavery for $2,000. That's how much it cost. And he also purchased his wife's freedom, which was huge. So I think that's super dope to hear about stuff like that. Slavery was an unprecedented time, and African Americans had a lot of hardships, a lot of challenges, a lot of doorways closed, a lot of things against them. And for someone like Richard Allen to persevere in that, and of course, obviously, you create your own luck. You got to have a little bit of luck, for his situation to even play out the way it did. But for his resilience and perseverance to not only purchase his own freedom, but his wife's as well, I thought that was dope, super dope, really, really huge. So I wanted to bring up Richard Allen and Absalom Jones. Go look him up too. You'll be the better for it. I think you'll really, really be super grateful for that. But just a shorter episode this time around, guys. I can't wait for you to hear this episode, and I can't wait for you to think about just some of the things that you've learned from Richard Allen, and hopefully you can take a piece of him from his life to strengthen your own. And actually, you know what? No, there was one more thing that I wanted to bring up. There was one more thing I wanted to talk about. So there's a lot of things that I'm learning about in counseling, and one thing in particular is communication. And it was this exercise that I had to do where it's called active listening, which is super dope, and it's really, really helpful because it basically teaches you how to listen to somebody. And it kind of got me to thinking about how men and women are constantly at each other's throats, and how you can go on a platform like Twitter or Facebook and see a lot of men and women generalizing each other based on their own experiences. And it gets really, really sad because from the outside looking in, it goes, wow, who hurt all of these different men and women where they're so anti the other? There's so many men out there that I see that are anti women, and there's so many women out there who are anti men, and it really gets me upset. And I got to thinking about this active listening, and I made a key observation. And in fact, I actually made it recently. If you go online and you see all these generalizations, nobody wants to listen as to why the person feels that way. They automatically get defensive, or they automatically attack the person's ideology, or in some cases, they attack the person. And this is why active listening is so important. Somebody can get on stage and say something really hurtful or harmful towards a specific group. And you have a few choices when it comes to reacting. You can get defensive. You can go on offense and attack, or you can listen. And I think listening is one of the best things you can do. Unless someone is intentionally trying to harm you or your family or the people you love and care about, I think listening is so important. Because maybe if you listen, you can discover the pain behind that generalization, the grief behind that generalization, the sorrow behind that generalization. And I think that's really, really important in the effort to understand the opposite sex. This is why we have so many people's relationship with their parents damaged. This is why we have so many people's relationship with their kids damaged. And more importantly, why so many romantic relationships are doomed to fail. Because active listening isn't a thing. So I encourage you to go do some research on active listening, but I'm going to give you a little bit of it right now. So there's two roles in active listener. There's the speaker and there's the listener. The listener's job is to empathize and try to relate to whatever the person's going through, even if you disagree. Your goal is to try to put yourself in that person's shoes or try to find something that they're talking about and incorporate it into your own emotions. So if someone's yelling at you for being late and in your mind you had a legitimate reason for being late, try to take a step back and go, you know what? I would be frustrated if I planned on doing something, but somebody was late, so I couldn't. Or I felt restricted because I couldn't do something without somebody else, and that person was late. It's one of those things where I guess the best example of that I can give is imagine someone doing you a favor and giving you a ride. That person offered to give you a ride, but that person was late. You get in, you're upset. And if you express how you express your displeasure and your frustration, the first word out of that person's mouth, generally speaking, is, I'm giving you a ride. I'm doing you a favor. And in a way, you're kind of like, yeah, exactly. You're doing me a favor. You should be on time for that. And the listener's job in that scenario, the listener's job is going, you know what? If I was expecting somebody to show up at a specific time, I went out of my way. I got up. I made sure I was ready and prepared for that person so I can get to where I got to go. And that the only thing that person got to worry about is getting here, picking me up, and dropping me off. And that person was late. I would be frustrated too. So that's what the listener's role is for active listening. The speaker's role isn't to convince the person to try and fall into their line of thinking or convince them to believe in their belief system. The speaker's goal is to simply express feeling. That's where the whole I feel statements come from, where you're saying, I felt like this when you did this. Or when you did that, it made me feel this way. Or when you don't do this, it sounds like this to me, so I react this way. And I think if we had more of that, and I would love to see like seminars and classes on this on like a daily basis, like college courses or high school courses, not something that's optional, but something that you actively learn to do. I would really like to see it, especially in a lot of programs like the Big Brothers, Big Sisters programs or Concerned Black Men, and even in my organization, Freemasonry. I would love to see something like this that we teach younger people and we teach older people alike on how to do. Because if no one else at all, at least the person that you're talking to benefits from it, But the best case scenario is everybody that person touches benefits from it, because now they're going to pass on the knowledge that they learned. So when I go on Twitter and I see all these different people at each other's throats, and I see a woman make a generalization about a man, like, men really ain't, they, of course, the 4-letter word there, men really ain't crap. And you see thousands, tens of thousands, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of people like it. And it's putting this toxic message out there based off of this one person's perception of the opposite sex. And I know it's really, really easy. I got to check myself sometimes. I know it's really, really easy to look at that post and you go like, no, the men that you mess with ain't crap. I'm a good man, or the people I know, we're good men. The people, you just got a poor choice. Take a step back and try to understand that. I'm not saying do this on Twitter, because you don't know these people and you can't really have a productive conversation online anyway. But just try to use that as an example for the people that you can touch, the people you do know, and try to understand where that line of thinking is coming from. And that could go anywhere, for something as simple as why somebody doesn't want to live in the city, or something as extreme as racism. You take a step back, you listen, and if you have the tolerance for it, if you have the fortitude for it, because not everybody is built this way, you should listen and try to understand why that person might feel that way. Because you never know. Not only will you potentially find out more about that person, you could find out more about yourself. You could maybe relate to that person in the sense that, while I wonder how fixed this person was on this, I wonder if there's anything in my life that I'm that way on, where I'm like fixed on something and nobody else can tell me otherwise. So I really wanted to share that with you all. If you're not already in therapy or counseling, I highly encourage it. Depending on who your insurance provider is, it might even be free. My couples counseling initially started off with like a $25 copay. Now it's free. There were some things probably changed due to quarantine that my insurance provider covers 100% of the cost. So I'm literally getting help from a professional on how to be better as a person and to be better as a boyfriend for free. And that's invaluable. But that's all I got, everybody. I appreciate you tuning in and listening. I'm sorry that the podcast was shorter than normal, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it, and I'll talk to you all online. And if you don't already follow me on Instagram, please do. I actually did a really cool interview with the founder and CEO of Cold Hearted Lifestyle, which is an urban clothing line. And it was a great interview. Lasted probably about an hour or so, maybe a little over an hour. And I did it live. I did it over Instagram Live. I did it live and I posted it raw. So it's up on my Instagram right now. I will be editing certain clips of it just for bite-sized viewership for some people. But if you do want to watch the whole thing, it's on my Instagram. All you got to do is go to my Instagram page, look at my videos, and you'll see like a split video. You'll see me and you'll see Rock Taylor, who is the founder and CEO of Cold Hearted Lifestyle. It was really, really dope. Another way to celebrate Black excellence. And I cannot wait for you all to sit down and watch that. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, too, because I'm going to start to do more video interviews. I actually have 2 coming up that I'm really excited about. So more reason for you all to follow me, guys, and to subscribe to the YouTube as well. But that said, goodbye for the 5th time. And as always, I'll keep talking if you'll listen. Take care.